How are you? Sorry, I'm yawning. Excuse me.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to everyone here. It is Thursday, October 25th, and for our roll call today, we have Dale Hansen, Business Administrator, Terry, thank you, Terry Rhodes. This is my hardest part, is remembering everybody's names, which is so crazy. I know everybody really well. I've got them written down. Terry Rhodes, board member. Jeff Nielsen, board member. Larry Grunig, board member. I'm Kathy Christiansen, board member. Roger Pulsifer, board member. Steve Norton, superintendent. Randall Bagley, board member. And Alan Grunig, board member. And we're going to begin with our pledge and mission statement, which Roger will lead us in on that. Okay, and that goes down to Jeff.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our mission is to educate students for success in a changing world.
Okay, thank you. Any public input? All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. Then I will take a motion to pass the consent agenda.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as printed.
I second it.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote. Hurry faster.
Dale?
Barely started it, maybe.
Give it a minute. I can't even get out of board docs. So.
How would you like to vote?
Try it again.
Still have Roger and Larry. Roger? No place to vote.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and then Roger and Larry.
You put him in attendance?
Just what you want to eat on him.
Is he on your attendance roll?
Yeah.
Mark it.
Should I
He's
log
gonna
out?
vote.
Not showing.
Say yea.
Yay.
Can't even get into board docs here.
Okay, all the votes are in and in favor of the motion.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and move to our action agenda, and we will go ahead and begin with the request for approval of the Millville Elementary Trust lands change. And Principal
Thanks.
Brady Johnson will present that.
Oh, you have to turn it on. Hold it up. Turn it on.
Test.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, good evening. I came and presented at your previous work session, so I'm happy to answer any additional questions you may have regarding the amendment to our school land trust plan.
Anybody have questions? Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the Millville Elementary Trust lands change.
I move that we approve the Millville Elementary Trust line changes. I second it.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote.
Thank you.
And we'll know in 1 minute if it passed.
Yeah,
Yay.
all the votes are in and unanimous in favor of the motion.
There you go. Okay. All right. We'll next have, let's see, Brittany, come on up for her request to approve the Ridgeline High School student clubs.
Do you have any questions about the clubs I presented last board meeting?
Okay. I'll take a motion to approve the Ridgeline High School student clubs.
I move that we approve the Ridgeline High student clubs.
I second it.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll vote.
Thank you.
nay.
You'll have to count me the same way, Dale.
you.
I got kicked out.
Okay, then we do have all the votes in then now, unanimous in favor of the motion.
Okay. Okay, next we'll have the request for approval of the proposed Green Canyon Student Clubs.
Randy Bannion's out of town and asked if I'd cover this for him tonight. Last time that Randy was here and addressed the board, he had a few questions about the Conspiracy Club. And he asked that club to rewrite their application, and they have not done it at this point. So Randy says he's pulling that club from this request for approval tonight. So at this point, we're asking for your approval
Okay. I'll
with
take
the Conspiracy Club removed.
All right. I'll take a motion to approve the Green Canyon Student Clubs
Kathy?
excluding.
Kathy, before you do that, what is the Majestic Milkshake Club? That sounds awfully interesting.
Yeah, I read that, and I can't remember.
They just make different milkshakes. When Randy explained it last time.
Yeah, he did.
If you open it up here and read it, that's what they do.
That's what I looked into that and
Yeah.
saw that, and I thought, that's not a
Join
bad
it.
club.
Go ahead and join it.
Okay, I'll take a motion then.
I move that we approve the proposed Green Canyon Student Clubs,
Second?
Any discussion?
excluding the Conspiracy Club, sorry.
Any discussion?
Second?
Okay, we'll vote.
Alan.
Alan? Okay.
I voted yay.
What is it? Oh, it's Roger. You got it, okay. All right, so then all the votes are in and unanimous in favor of the motion.
Okay. All right. Request for the approval of the bloodborne pathogen policy.
It's no milkshakes, but it's the next best thing you can talk about. So a couple of months ago, we brought the bloodborne pathogens plan to the district, and now we're seeking approval for it.
Okay. I'll take a motion to approve the bloodborne pathogen policy.
I move that we approve the bloodborne pathogen policy as written.
If you think that's the next best thing to milkshake, boy, you know, we need to have a conversation here.
I second.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll vote.
So all the votes are in and unanimous in favor of the motion.
All right, thank you. Is that considered real-time voting or not?
I don't know.
It's pretty real.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Request for the approval of student membership and accountability.
All right, I brought this before the board last month. There were a couple of questions Terry had emailed me. I had made some adjustments on that, one of which was I was thinking you could link directly to a policy on our policy, but you can't. So I instead put descriptions of what the policy was and put that in place there. So that should have been the updated copy that you had.
Okay. I'll take a motion to approve the student membership and accountability.
I move that we approve the student membership and accountability policy.
I second it.
Any discussion?
Thanks for changing that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it to my attention.
We're going to have all of our policies in the right place.
I've got a couple of more.
Oh,
so.
yeah.
suspense is killing, isn't
It is. I'm just like, my heart's pounding.
We should have some music or something going until
The Jeopardy music should be playing or something.
Da, 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 da.
I wonder if that guy got paid for writing that song.
Oh, I'm sure. He probably has made a ton of money.
From Griffith Road.
Did he?
Are you for it?
Okay, so all the votes are in and unanimous in favor of the motion.
All right, thank you very
Okay.
much.
All right, next, the request for the approval of the district financial audit report.
We don't say it. I had to get some water for this one to go down.
It is pretty dry. All right. So I am Brad Nilsson. I am the audit manager with Allred Jackson, and we did come and give a presentation to the audit committee, and Terry was there, and she was kind enough to say
No,
that
no, I did not volunteer for
she did
this.
not
I want you to
volunteer. She was
know
kind
I
enough
did
to
not
accept.
volunteer
Hey,
for
I
this.
was not going to say that she volunteered. She was kind enough to accept a
Okay.
request to go over the audit report, and I am here as supporting,
He's correcting.
in a supporting role. But any questions that you may have as we're going through, go ahead and ask.
So if you open the audit, the thing that's I always look at first is back in the back on page 100. You can flip there if you want, or you can just listen to me tell you there were no findings, which is so awesome to me, because that's an issue for a lot of people. And then if you turn to page 110, Diana, when she presented this,
Your pages are a little bit off, Terry.
sorry.
By the way.
I'm using the draft copy.
Yeah, so you're one
'Cause that's
you're
when
one
I
page
wrote
off.
it.
So we're one page behind where Terry's telling us to go.
Oh, I'm ahead.
Yeah.
So should we be on 109?
So we should be on
You should be
109.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry. But Diana said that by the Utah State Auditor is now requiring, with the audit, they not only audit finances, but they audit our records. And so, as a school board, we were written up with a finding, or it wasn't a finding, it was another matter, because we took action on an item that was not on the agenda.
Now, if I understand this right, Dale, this got put on the amended agenda, but the amended agenda did not get posted to the public notice website.
And it wasn't posted
So.
soon enough, so, anyway. So it was us who were in trouble, not Dale's office. Then, if you go back to the beginning, is page 26 the one that starts with statement of net position?
Page 27.
7? Oh,
Yes.
so I'm on the same page then. This, you'll notice that, well, first I should tell you that Dale said, usually the auditors are only in the district office for 2 weeks. This year they were there 3 weeks, so it was even more thorough. But if you look at page 27, the two biggest things are that our cash went down because cash and investments went down, but as an offset to that, our capital went up. So if you look at, because of our buildings, because we have are finishing out the last, or have finished out the last of the projects from the bond funds. So
And also the acquisition of the district office as well.
yeah, and the acquisition of that. And, but the really good thing is that our accounts payable went down, and so our debt went down because we acquired no new debt with all of our building acquisitions last year. Then if you turn the page over, one to the next page, which is 28 in my book, and look at the bottom two numbers, you see that in 2018, our equity increased by 9.2 million. So that reflects the investments in our capital. and probably includes that, does that include the building?
Yes.
Okay, new building. If you turn to page 34, hopefully it's the same page for you. And if you look at, so this is government funds, and this shows revenues and expenditures. But so if you look at the top line, it shows property taxes. And we had an increase in almost 3 million of our property tax revenue, which is always good for us as board members and not so good for us as property owners, right? But also there was, if you look down on state funding, the state funding went up 8 million, and the federal aid went up 2 million. And a lot of that is due to just increases in students in the district. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, I would note on that increase in property taxes, we did have I believe it was a 7% increase in our tax base.
Yeah, there was an increase in tax.
So actuality, our tax rate went down, even though it generated more taxes than it had the year before. So, because we had a larger base to spread our property taxes across.
So can I ask one question on that? Because I had somebody ask me about that. They said that their taxes really went up. Maybe it's for this year, I don't know. And I said, I don't think your tax should have gone up, but the assessment of your home is probably what, is that correct?
Yeah, that's
gosh,
usually
I
the
got that
case. It's usually every 3 or 4 years they'll adjust the appraised value or the taxable value of your home. And that's where the increase usually is found with people that have.
Okay.
Because our tax rate the last 3 or so years has consistently gone down. But I can't control their assessed value. of the
And who
property.
does that? Who assesses the value of the homes?
Actually, the county assessor's office, that's their
Okay.
job.
And they have a law that tells them, I think it's every 5 years, every property has to be reevaluated. It might have gone down to 3. Can you remember? Is it 3 or 5 now? But, so they're under law that they have to reevaluate property based on the actual sales of homes in the valley.
Okay.
Or the location.
Okay. Well, I'm going to see her again, so I'll follow up. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Now, if you turn to page 66 in my book, another interesting note is how low our construction commitments are, just due to finishing projects on the bond. So hopefully it's 66, yeah. If you look under construction commitments, we're down to only about $500,000 in commitments to finish. So it really is almost finished. And then I think that's everything that I have marked. Brian, do you want to add something?
I really don't have anything to add. Your assets have gone up, liabilities have gone down, overall positive net position, so good for you guys, and we really appreciate working with Dale and with Superintendent Norton and with the audit committee as well. Thank you, Terry, for your help, so we really appreciate it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I'll take a motion then to approve the district financial audit report for the 2018 year.
I make a motion, we approve the district financial report for year 2018.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote.
Where is Diane anyway? Tell her tough duty.
All the votes are in and unanimous in favor of the motion.
Thanks, Brad.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you, Dale. You do a great job with our finances. We appreciate all of the work that you do to keep us in the black. Okay, request for the approval of the Sharp survey. Extra question?
Brianne couldn't be here today because she had GYC, so she asked me if I would take this. So as we looked at this, the goal is to see how many kids are using seat belts, and see if there are pressure from other kids to make them use seat belts when they're in their car. And depending on what the findings are when they come back, then there'll be programs that we'll take out into the schools to help the kids understand the importance of seat belts. And,
Okay.
and hopefully we can have no more accidents, deaths, or injuries because kids didn't wear seat belts. That's what this is all about, is the health of the kids.
All right, I'll take a motion to approve the SHARP survey extra question.
I move that we approve the SHARP survey extra question.
I second it.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll vote.
Okay, all the votes are in and unanimous in favor of the motion.
Okay. All right, the approval of the UCA plan. Oh, wait a minute, I skipped one. Number 8, the approval of the student school attendance and truancy policy.
I covered this with you the last time we were together and visited with this. Just a couple of things I want to point out in summary of the policy. It's really doing about 3 different things. It's allowing, it will have the schools actually give a notice of truancy to parents or guardians. After that, this policy allows the school to issue a truancy citation based upon what the school chooses to do with that, and there's a set fee in there that the board would approve of this policy. And the third part is once they've gone through all the different stages, working with a student and a parent to try to solve the truancy problems, if that doesn't work, they can then go through the habitual truancy school-based referral form and actually refer the student to juvenile court. This has to document everything that the school has done prior, and then this will allow the student then to be referred to juvenile court. So it really sets in policy the procedures that a school needs to follow in order to get them to that state.
Since I wasn't here last time, is this different than what we had before the legislature changed the?
Yeah, this is addressing the changes in that. One of the main things is that in the past, the school resource officer was able to offer to give a truancy citation. This here now, it's one of the school administrators can now write a truancy citation.
Okay.
Has the same, and then they still have the same, they can still maneuver the same way with that citation. They can use it as a way to get a student to improve behavior or actually issue the citation and continue to work with students that way. But after so many steps, so many truancies, and I think the policy states 12, at that point they would then move ahead to refer them to juvenile court.
Great. Okay. I will take a motion to approve the student school attendance and truancy policy.
I'll move that we, let me get it right here. I move that we request for approval of student schools attendance and truancy policy.
Second.
Any discussion or more questions?
Sorry, so it's the truancy for the notice of truancy, the habitual one, for the form, is they have to be truant at least 5 times. Is that, but that's higher than it used to be, right?
I don't know that it's higher. Schools have usually tried to work. I would dare say they would work with a student at least that many times before they would even consider taking a student to juvenile court over truancy.
Hey, So what do we do with the students who go on family vacations 2 or 3 times a year and they miss
This,
more
this
than
is,
12 weeks?
it's addressed in here where, it encourages the parent to contact the school before they leave, to let them know they're going so that their absence can be marked the appropriate way.
Okay.
If they just take off and they go, they'll be marked truant. But we're asking the parents, just communicate before, we know it can be marked the right way, and then it's taken care of.
Okay.
So, Mike, what percentage, I mean, do you know what percentage of students would be in trouble under this, with the 5 truancies?
Yeah. In the past, you'd maybe have 1 or 2 students a year.
Okay.
It is, and that's why it's really upsetting up here to many of the schools that the state has gone through this whole process of acting like schools were sending everybody to juvenile
Right.
court for truancy. It's just not the case. And in our opinion, they broke something that was working just
all right.
fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and vote then.
Okay, all the votes are in and unanimous in favor of the motion.
Okay. All right, request for approval of the UCA plan.
If you'll remember, last time I was here, I slaughtered a piece of the UCA plan, and that was that definition. My purpose then was to, if we wanted to continue using the plan as we have in the past, we needed to come up with a new board-approved definition for an at-risk student. And that's where I failed miserably. So I would like to read to you what the final was on that, because I think there was a little confusion that evening. So according to our UCA plan, our definition of an at-risk student would be students who score below proficient or below benchmark on required state testing, along with students who have a physical or mental disability that substantially limits one or more major life activities, will be considered at risk of academic failure. By your approval of that definition, it basically allowed us to keep our UCA plan as we've used it in the past. And so what we've done is we have just mirrored what we've done for the last few years with our UCA plan, so that we can combine these different budgets, whether it be state or federal money or whatever, all for the purpose of helping our at-risk students. This will be the last year that we use the template from this UCA template that we've been using. It goes on to the Utah grants or something. I think next year it'll change up just a little. So anyway, same plan that we've been using for the last 3 or 4 years, just here to seek approval.
Okay. I will take a motion to approve the UCA plan.
I move that we approve the Utah Consolidated Achievement Plan.
I second it.
Questions, discussion? Okay, we'll vote.
Okay, all the votes are in and unanimous in favor of the motion.
Okay, the next one is just one of our board policies. And the only thing that has been changed is the B under number 1 on organization, which the Cache County Board of Education shall elect a president and a vice president from its own membership for no more than 2 consecutive 2-year terms at a time. And that's what was added, at a time, and until a successor is elected.
Actually, didn't you remove the last paragraph as well, the section 4?
Let me look.
That was here originally.
Yes. Okay, and that has been removed. So this is according to the state policy as it is. Do we have to vote on this if it's a board? Okay. All right, I'll take a motion then to approve let me see what it's called.
New board policy.
The new board policy.
I make a motion that we approve the new board policy.
I second it.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll vote.
Okay, all the votes are in and unanimous in favor of the motion.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. All right, we'll move down to our reports, and it looks like we have quite a few reports this evening. So we'll begin with the short survey questions and their importance. Well, thanks for being here, David, and our state
Are you going to
representative.
introduce Suzanne?
Yeah,
Okay.
So, I kind of want to know more about this conspiracy club. Just to kind of give a background of why we're here, over the course of the summer, we had been working with the school district on ways to maybe ease the burden to the schools on administering the survey. Part of that was maybe doing online, particularly online consent forms. And then, obviously, the SHARP over the summer had gotten approval to add a couple of questions to the SHARP survey, and I think that might have led to a review of the surveys that or the questions that are asked on the surveys. And Alan asked me here to kind of give a background on that and why those questions are being asked. I don't have specific answers on those because I just deal with the data. I don't do a whole lot with the questions. And so Susanna Burr is from the Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health at the state. She kind of has a better grasp on the whole survey. And then for moral support, I asked Shelley here too. She works with CAPSA, and so she utilizes some of the sexual violence question data in our community specifically, and so she could potentially answer some questions to those as well. But I want to give a little bit of a background before I turn it over to Susanna, and then for any questions that you all might have on the SHARP survey. One, I want to stress that there's two different surveys that are administered at the same time. And so there's the P&A, or the Prevention Needs Assessment survey. That's the data that when I come and present to you all, that I share with you all. It's the substance misuse, the mental health indicators, the risk and protective factors that we use heavily in prevention. And then there's the YRBS, or the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, thanks. And that's a national survey, and it's collected statewide, and only a very small portion of students take the YRBS survey. In Cache County in 2017, there was 2 high schools selected to participate in the YRBS survey. That was Skyview and Mountain Crest. Skyview had 50 students, Mountain Crest, or might be the other way, Mountain Crest had 50 and Skyview had 80 students that participated. It'd be about the same. This time, both those high schools have been selected to participate in the YRBS again. SHARPS, so the P&A survey that most students take, did add 2 questions, and those 2 questions were thinking about gender, which of the following best describes you, and they have the options of women, girl, man, boy, transgender, or other. And then the second question is, which of the following best describes you, heterosexual, straight, gay or lesbian, bisexual, not sure, / other. And so that's kind of a background. Again, those questions are added to the 8th, 10th, and 12th grade survey. The 6th graders will not be asked that question. The YRBS that asks some of the sexual violence questions is only given in high schools. It is not given to the 8th or the 6th graders at all. And so I'm going to have Susanna, if she has anything that she wants to add to that, and then we'll open it up to questions for you all as well, or if Shelley, if you have anything you want to add to.
Kind of want to know if you have questions first, because I don't want to give more information than you need and don't want to take your time. And I prefer not holding this. Thought you were going to do rock star move there, David. So the SHARP survey, again, we administer it to all the 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders throughout the state of Utah. And again, that's where we've tried to lessen the burden on schools. Instead of asking multiple surveys at different times of the year, we try to consolidate into one. The YRBS survey, again, as David said, is a much smaller sample, and last administration in 2017, we were a part of a larger additional sample, so that 50 and 80 was actually bigger than it will be this term around for the YRBS. We used the data not only at the state level, but at the national level. We don't use anything at the school district level for the YRBS, which is again different from the PNA. If I use the acronyms, am I okay? Looking at you all, okay. I don't want to get into my jargon. The other thing is that I know that the health department, the Utah Department of Health, actively uses all this data for grant writing, for getting additional supports, not only at the state level, but in the local health district levels. It also supports people like Shelley with the child abuse prevention. Okay, thought I was going with the right one. But that's one of the things that we really use the data for. There are also some options, and I try to remember if you just said this. So we have active consent, so all of the parents have the ability to say yes or no if my child takes the survey, and that includes the YRBS. They also have the right to see the entire survey. So there's an A leg, which is the PNA, and the B leg, which is the YRBS. The students have at any time the right to say, I don't want to take this survey, so they can opt out the day of. They can also skip any questions that they are uncomfortable with, and those are part of the instructions that they are given. Do you have a question? I'm like, I don't know else you want.
Well, how does that benefit Cache County School District?
Well, the YRBS that benefits Cache County School District because it's part of the community. As far as knowing what's the statewide, what's going on, and again, I don't believe you can drill down too much past the health district, because you can't really say just Cache County School District.
For the YRBS.
For the YRBS.
Yeah.
This is the local health district, so that would include multiple counties. Like, yeah, it's Bear River, right? I'm not losing my mind.
Okay,
So
what
you'd-
about the Sharps? Explain the Sharp service.
So the Sharp would do the same, but the Sharp actually so the Sharp is encompassing both. So when we say Sharp, we're talking about both. But often what I refer to, because I use more of the prevention needs assessment data, and what David refers to is that prevention needs assessment with the risk and protective factors. That we can drill down, especially if we have a larger sample, down to the school, if it's a large enough sample. And we try to make sure that we don't do anything that's going to create any conflict of interest or confidentiality issues. In smaller communities, and I'll use Northeastern, which is Daggett, Duchesne, Uinta, if a student at Union High School is one of 25, it's a lot easier to pick out maybe that one student of 25 than the entire, I don't know how many students are at Skyview or Mountain Crest. But that's kind of what we try to make sure, that there's nothing that drills down even lower that would say, oh, we can easily pick out that that's Billy that responded to that. We use that for the PNA portion, not only for grants for the state, which, by the way, we have just procured a new one that's $2.2 million, which is very exciting, for underage drinking and marijuana. But we also use it for our collaborations with other agencies. So the health department, the private entities, we don't give them identifiable data, but we do show this is why we want to address things. And so Intermountain has been supportive of some of our opioid efforts based on some of the data, not only at the state level, but at a health district level. I'm like, what other questions do you have? Concerns?
So help me to understand, which one did I get multiple letters to the editor last time on? And
What ones did you get?
I would really like to not have that happen again.
So what were they, those questions?
And how did we get into that situation when 2 or 3 districts opted out? And so just walk me through, so.
Yeah, I can answer about the other districts. I'm not sure if you know more about that history. I think the questions last time that caused the angst and the letters to the editor was the 2 new questions added. So the gay, straight, lesbian, the kind of that, or what gender do you identify as? Those were the 2 questions that were going to be added in 2017, but then because of angst of some of the school districts across the state, and I think that for whatever reason they identified Cache County as that one major district that would have.
And for that particular, for that particular issue, because if people had opted out of the YRBS sample, it would have not allowed the state to have a representative sample to get the data weighted properly and show something for the, even at the state level. So that's why they opted to take it off at that point, to preserve a sample size, to keep, that they could say, you can ask all the YRBS questions minus those two that we're now asking to the state, so they can get that sample and have the data.
And I think the important thing to distinguish there is probably when you get your letter as a school board or a school district to participate in this, it's the SHARP survey, right? And so if a school district says, we're not going to participate in the SHARP, that means they're not participating in the PNA or the YRBS. And so the questions in 2017 were on the PNA survey, or would have been added to the PNA survey, but the issue was that that wouldn't have allowed the state to reach their requirement for the YRBS sample. And so, again, the YRBS hasn't changed their questions for their particular survey for years. They've asked the same questions for a really, really long time. It's the PNA survey that is added, was going to add them in 2017, and has now added them in 2019.
It was actually the YRBS that was in 2017.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, and that's why, and there was a pushback on that, those two questions, and again, to preserve the sample. But after the state suicide prevention task force endorsed and said, we want these questions to be asked on the SHARP, the Student Health and Risk Prevention Survey, that's when we as a group said, we know that they were going to be asked on the YRBS, let's ask them on the PNA, which reaches a larger sample.
But doesn't the angst still exist?
There may be angst, but again, we have a lot more support, and we have support from the entire Suicide Prevention Task Force. They've come out with a letter in support of it. Are you guys familiar with the Suicide Prevention Task Force? I don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all those participants, so it wasn't just the state agencies or the health department saying, we want to ask these questions because we have these hypotheses. There was a lot of private religious factions that came in and said, this is something that was very important for us to be able to identify subpopulations with suicide risk. And that's why these two questions were then endorsed and asked to be added for the high school students only.
Well, they were endorsed by the groups, but not the populace at whole, right? I mean, I don't know, is that still going to be an issue?
So far, it hasn't been. Like, I will tell you that, I don't want to rat people out. There has been 2 districts that have refused to take the SHARP survey in years past. And in the, I've been a part of the surveying since 2003, which is when we started doing this. Well, this model of it. And in those years, that one of the districts is just now coming on board this year. So that gave me a lot of really great positives that this rural community, not this rural community that we're standing in, but the rural community in Utah was endorsing that, yes, we will take the survey this year. And that's...
Well, Suzanne, if memory serves, it wasn't those 2 questions that we had so much angst about. It was the sexual violent questions.
Right, that's what he was
on the
mentioning.
YRB, that caused us a lot of grief.
So is that what we were receiving emails or letters to last year?
Well, it was because we opted out.
Oh.
That we got.
So my question is, so the new sexual health, or not new, are the sexual health questions the new concerns you have now different from 2 years ago?
Well, you know, our community, when those questions come out, have you been raped or have you raped somebody? And
Yes.
that's what they're asking.
Oh, yeah.
That causes some angst among our population. And so that was the concern.
Okay. Again, they've been asked for a number of years, and I guess I'd want to know what their concerns are. Are they concerned about trauma? Are they concerned about fear? I'd be able to answer better why this is a useful question if I understood what their concerns were. Do you have any idea of what?
Well, I think part of the concerns were that it's introducing something new to some of our students.
Okay.
You know, and it brings up some guilt
Okay.
in some of them that have had that happen before. And I know it's not a very big survey, so.
No, I know, but it isn't, one student
Those are some
isn't.
of the issues that we were dealing with. And we had some people that were really upset that we opted out.
upset you opted out because they wanted those questions asked?
Yes.
Okay. Make sure.
I think that's where most of your emails came from. And our
Well, yeah,
and our
most
conversations.
of the blowback we received
Mhm.
basically was from people who thought we should have
Oh.
taken the survey.
That's a completely different.
So that's, and that was
Yeah.
a message, but there were, if it had gone the other way,
Right.
we would have probably received much more input from people. Got a lot from the university.
Mhm.
One particular professor up there decided it was a quest to see if he could get us to change our mind, I think. And nobody had come and talked to us before those questions were brought to us, so we had no idea, and trying to determine how that information would be beneficial to our counselors, or to me, or to our administration, or to principals, or to teachers, we couldn't quite get a grasp
Right.
on
And it-
how come we would want that information. We know that we have all those issues in our school district, and we have kids who are identified in all those categories that we're asking questions about. We know that. And just because we have it on a survey doesn't mean that we're going to do anything any different or better. We already know that we have an issue, and that was kind of where I was coming from, because nobody came and talked to us and told us why they wanted that information. So without that information, it was much easier to make a decision based on, we can't see the value to us as a district to have that information, even in, we knew we weren't going to get names.
Right.
So in other words, you're just telling me that I have a population, and I already know I have that population, so.
So there's two issues that I'm hearing. So you have questions, the sexual violence questions, the four questions, and that you had some issues of not asking those. And then the other two of the sexual identity or the gender identity questions, the concern was that if you asked them, there was concerns about asking them. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
But there's also one other issue, and that is with the counselors at the schools, because the data is aggregate. And so it can show them trends, but no one specific.
Correct.
And so it's not, I mean, when we are in schools, after the results come out, they're like, okay, here's what it was. But it's not that helpful to our schools. I can see how the data is helpful to the state and the nation. But to our schools, to our counselors, it's not that helpful.
So for the two questions, for the gender identity questions, that would be able to be drilled down to the school level.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you, but I can't give you an answer on the four sexual violence
They're not
questions,
gonna
because that will never be down to your school district level. And I think there is value in having some of that information in planning and addressing the issues, but I unfortunately can tell you that those questions won't be that far down. As far as the gender identity questions, here's how it can be useful actually to your schools. One of the things with prevention is that we do work on a universal approach. There's also selective, meaning that there's a small subset that we might identify. And while we wouldn't know those particular students, it would identify maybe additional resources that you would need to have available within the district. As a counselor, you have your comp guidance reports that you do, or your projects that you do every 3 years. And this data could be used towards, this is what we're going to do for our school or for our community or our district. So there are useful ways to use it in a planning and a strategic way. You will not use it in an individual way, so you would never be able to say, Billy's this person and this is Mary. But again, the SHARP isn't identifying an individual, but a community need. And if we're identifying that the estimate is 10% of our students identify as something, as either transgender or as gay, lesbian, bisexual, then we know that, and we're above that rate, then maybe we need to look at what services are available for parents in the community. What about the students that are in our school? Do they have adequate support as a flag school association? Are there gay, lesbian, straight associations? are there things that the counselors then would know that they have to study and be prepared for dealing with? And again, yeah, it's not going to be the individual, but that's actually been one of the beauties of the SHARP survey, is that it isn't singling someone out and alienating them, but making them feel part of a bigger community as a whole.
So do you get this information to the counselors so they know how
They do.
Okay.
Well, at the school district level, and if they have a sufficient sample size, it could go down to the school if it's appropriate. Does that make, like, so if you only surveyed 10 people in the school, we would still have to roll that up to the district. But if it, am I saying you're, no, like, is that?
Right. Right. Well, I think the sample is 25, so if there's at least 25, then schools get their individual data. I just want to speak to we've been, because that was some of the angst that I heard when we would come to our presentation, is that, well, how do the schools use this? And so we went to the schools, and we are actually working with counselors now. So we've met with counselors at every elementary school and most of the middle and high school counselors, presenting the SHARPS data to them and asking them to come up with a prevention plan of their own for their school. And why the aggregate data is so important even for the school level is because even if I identify kids who have mental health needs or treatment needs, that now becomes treatment, not prevention. The universal aggregated data is vital to the prevention needs. What can I do? What risk factors or protective factors are at my school that I need to address specifically that will keep kids from having substance misuse issues or having mental health issues? And so for an example, one school, so we were meeting with the counselors, one school brought up an evidence-based program. And so this was a program that I don't think they knew was a prevention evidence-based program. They had just heard about it before, and they were very interested in getting this program implemented at their school. They knew that it addressed specific risk factor, particularly pro-social involvement and rewards for pro-social involvement for students at their school that they knew was low. Without the SHARPS data, they wouldn't be able to identify that that was a risk factor at their school or a protective factor at their school. We're now working with them to get the funds to provide for that program, but we would need their individual school data to be able to write the grant for the division to be able to get the funding for it. And so that's one way that one or two of our schools, because of working with the SHARP survey, will hopefully either by next year, by January, or by next school year have a new evidence-based program that has the evidence to show that it's work. It's not just what feel-good thing can we do at our school, what red ribbon run activity or week activity can we do, but it's an actual evidence-based program.
And I'm going to share, because I really like data. So one of the things that we're looking at, and we're going to start with the 2017 data, is actually looking at what risk and protective factors have stronger connection to certain outcomes. So that would be suicide, mental health, substance misuse or abuse, and violence, and things like that we do survey on the PNA even. And I attended a conference where we could see community norms had a different impact on males versus females. And what we would then do after this stuff is done, because we're doing that this month, once we get the 2019 data and we'll do it, won't be till September of 2019, because that's when the data becomes available. We would do the same kind of reports against the genders to see if there's anything that's creating a stronger relation. Is there a risk factor that is stronger for someone who identifies as gay, lesbian, or transgender than there is for someone who identifies as straight? There will be that data for, I know that at the state level for adults, we know that gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgenders smoke cigarettes and use substances at a much higher rate. I think it's 3 times the rate as someone who identifies as straight, which creates different strategies within the tobacco community and the pride community, trying to make sure that they have resources to help them with cessation or with substance use issues, which again, that's more treatment, but it is something that we look at for planning in a community.
Okay. Anyone have any other questions?
So let me just try and make sure in my mind how this works. Parents have to sign a form for the child to take it. there is an avenue for parents to see the survey
It is online for everyone to
online,
see.
okay? Is it on one of our sites, or do they have to go to?
No, so on the permission slip that they get, which is ridiculously long, not in a bad way, but I can remember getting it when my kid took it. I'm like, this is absurd, this is long. On there, it lists a specific site. It's Bach Harrison's site, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's there, and then you can see both legs of the survey.
Okay. And kids are selected randomly?
For the YRBS, yes. Well, and for the PNA, but we're hoping to do a larger sample this year, for PNA only.
Okay. And the questions what we've had questions on are only in the high school survey?
Correct. So the 2 questions are actually only supposed to be asked in the 10th and 12th grade questions.
And did you say they can not answer them if they choose?
They can skip it. Anything they want, they can skip. It doesn't invalidate the survey. And again, if they choose even halfway through the survey, say, I'm done, I don't want to do anymore, they have the option to do that.
Is that explained to them?
Yes, and it's what the proctor is supposed to read.
Okay. All right, anything else?
Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Do
you
you all
so
have my
much.
contact information if you need it?
Well, I
If they
think we know
don't,
where to get it.
if they don't, I can get it.
I know you can get it. I have your email. So, thank you
so much.
for your time.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thanks. Okay, our next report will be on the addition of 10 classrooms to Ridgeline High School.
This is the semifinals, right? Finals are tomorrow.
This is the finals.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. They swept. Oh, they didn't lose a set through the semifinals.
I thought they were games tomorrow, but they're not.
So did we get a score on the volleyball?
Skyview won the first set. And
In the
who-
finals,
champ-
in the state
In
final.
the finals. They're
Yeah.
playing Park City.
Yeah, tonight's the state finals.
Skyview
for
won the
that.
first set.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we thought it would be at least a couple of years longer before we'd be coming to the board to start talking to you about putting the additional 10 classrooms onto Ridgeline. Just a little bit of information that I do want to share with you and all we're doing here is just giving you basic information tonight and preparing for this. But about a year ago, we asked Wayne at DWA if he could give us an estimated cost at that time to put those 10 classrooms on. And at that time, he was thinking around $3.4 million. Of course, he can't get anything exact until he really goes out and gets bids from all the subcontractors and everything. Well, today, Ridgeline is just under 1,600 in student count at that school. And I've been working with Bob, and he's using every classroom in that school today. And when you take a look at the enrollment that's coming, that's in the capture area for Ridgeline, he'll go up about 50 students every year.
So, Mike, can I just ask a question really quick?
Uh-huh.
So I've had some people call me a little wound up about this. How did we get there? I mean, are there...
Yeah, I'll tell you how we got there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But anyway, we had so now, you know, the numbers are there and the kids are coming, and a brand-new high school, we have a couple options. One is you start adding a bunch of portables where you get ready to put the addition on. And really the only place you can put the addition on portables is right where the addition needs to go. And when this was all bid out, designed and everything through Design West, the 10 classrooms was always part of that school in the original proposals going out to the public when we were getting ready to go through and pass the bond election. We actually had the addition on at Ridgeline, but not at not at Green Canyon because of where the populations were that we could see coming. the bond passed, and then we sit down now and we have the money. Now we have to sit down and start doing what's called, value engineering. And I can remember we were sitting right in that room, right in there. And then now we have all the bids coming in from all the subcontractors, and we're finding out the real number, what these high schools were going to cost us to build. And at that time, at the expense of other projects, we would have put those 10 classrooms on. And so those 10 classrooms at that time were pulled out of the construction, even though they were bid and ready to go, so that we could manage the bond funds appropriately to complete all the projects that we talked about. We really thought we'd have a couple more years before we would be facing this kind of growth in Ridgeline. But there's a couple of factors that I think have been part of this growth. One is, and I think, I can't remember who, no, it was Kirk McCrae was in my office the other day, because he was looking at the numbers from our October 1 report and says, wow, you look at the numbers in the elementary and in the middle, and is all the growth happening in the high schools? You know, because that's what the numbers look like. Well, what happens is we have quite a few students in charter schools in the elementary grades up through 8th grade. And as soon as charter school, they step out of that 8th grade, they're all coming now to our 9-12 high schools. And so those numbers, even though they floated out in elementary and middle, they're coming right back when they're hitting us in the high schools. So we're getting ready to deal with that. And we have a lot of students who are requesting to come into our high schools that are not part of our current district. They want to come and be part of our district. And we'll accommodate what we can, but we have to be careful with that. Especially at Ridgeline this year, we had to deny requests because of room at that school. So how would we fund this? So now, first of all, did I answer your question?
Well, so that's where the fire is, Mike, is that people are telling me that we've got students there that shouldn't be going there, and I've, I said, well, the principal has control over that, and he's managing in that, and they said, well, we know people from Logan that are going there, and I don't feel like I have a leg to stand on, so I'm wondering what you would say in that instance, so I'm not so ignorant sometimes to talk.
And I can see the soup's antsy to say something, but I'll say it after you.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Try it first.
It all happens with the state law called open enrollment. Okay. And as public education facilities, wherever you are, whatever district you are, you really should not be denying acceptance into your school unless you're actually full, okay? And you have to be able to really prove that you're not full. And that means any student coming. I mean, the state laws are in such a way a student has so many choices today. They can go wherever they want. And as long as that school has room, the school should accept them.
And that decision on a secondary level has to be made at 9th grade. So a kid growing up in Logan, does not matter if there's room in one of our schools and his parents want to go through parental choice, they can file a parental choice request to go, but they have to make that decision in the 9th grade.
Sure, and I'm not being combative. I'm telling
Yes,
you what
I know,
I'm up
I know
against,
that.
and that's
Yeah.
it.
But
And
that-
so
I don't think most parents, I think they've heard the issue in relationship to athletics, but it's really, in the law is based on, if a school has space, a parent can go to can have their children apply for open enrollment at any school that has room.
Okay. And I talked about that law with them, but here's what I get lit up on is they say, well, you're going to go spend all this money to make the school accommodate more people, whereas if we just would have planned better and allowed the natural growth within the boundaries, then, we wouldn't have to spend this money. And that's where I'm kind of...
Yeah. But they're not recognizing the fact that parents in this whole valley have this choice.
Sure.
Not just the boundary area of Ridgeline.
Yeah.
This is a valley-wide
Yeah, and so this, anyway, they were mad because, well, we
Yeah.
heard you're gonna add on to Ridgeline and spend all this money, and we don't need to because they could go somewhere else if everybody stayed where they're supposed to. So that's what I'm just telling you what I'm up
Yeah,
against. So that's-
okay.
And
Yeah.
staying where they're supposed to is the part that the parent needs to understand. There is no place where you're supposed to be under the law, as long as there's room in the school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, superintendent, they're like,
Yeah.
well, why do we have boundaries then, you know, that's
Yeah.
and so,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
the circular argument that
Sure.
I'm in, that's.
Boundaries
is.
are, this idea of a kid being able to go anywhere to any school they want is the state's way, when they didn't get their way, that each kid could take their backpack funding with them.
Mhm.
That's what they really wanted. A kid could decide where to go, and he takes his funding with him. That does destroy boundaries. That makes it so you have no idea where a kid's going to go and where he's going to take his money. He gets upset with you, he just goes. At least under this, you do have the right to say, we're full in this particular area, so if you want to come to our school district, you would have to go up to Skyview to go to school, or up to Green Canyon to go to school. And that's essentially what we've done now at Ridgeline. Mountain Crest is not in that situation. If somebody wants to go to Mountain Crest, we still have to try and accommodate
Sure.
that. So most parents would think that that's not the way it was when we grew up. And
And I think you're right, a lot of it, this is education,
Yeah.
so that's what I've been trying
Yeah.
to do with them.
And most people who grew up when we did aren't going to buy into the idea because there's tax dollars involved in buildings.
That's the crux.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the state didn't really care that that was an issue because they left the individual districts responsible for building buildings. And they did not do anything to accommodate the fact that some districts might have to end up building buildings earlier because school choice kids came into the system. If that was even raised, which I know it was, did it get any consideration? Absolutely none. Okay? So,
Yeah.
to the state, it was their way of saying, we'll add competition into this by allowing parents to have that freedom to take their kid wherever they want. And eventually, the money will end up, because once they come to our district, we do get the M&O money for that kid. It's just that we don't end up with any building money, and that's probably what's agitating some people.
That's exactly.
And I have no answer for them on that, except contact your state legislator and ask for some consideration of what open enrollment does to districts that people want to go to, or schools that people want to go to. Corner Canyon was that way when it opened up. They billed it for a certain number, and all the people who had gone other places looked at that school and just flocked back, and so
Right.
it was immediately overcrowded. And they were people, a lot of those people were people who didn't live in that zone, and they didn't live in that district. But they saw a really nice school. We have some really nice schools, and they are built really, really close to Logan. In fact, neighbors have backyards that one's in Logan, one's in Cache County School District, and you have it in two areas of our district. And so when these two schools opened, there were lots of people who saw it as an opportunity to come to a different school for whatever reason, and we really didn't have a way to say, no, you can't. The law's on their side. So.
But don't you think also that it's important for the public to understand that we have always intended to put these classrooms on these schools? We're just doing it earlier.
We're just doing it earlier.
Earlier than we had intended, but we have always intended for those classrooms to go on
And
those
then
schools.
they might as well start thinking down the road, because that area of the valley is just going to continue to
Sure.
grow. So if you stay on this board very long, you'll be talking about where are we going to put the 9th grade, because the high school's too crowded. Somebody's going to say, well, should we add on again? Or should we just start surrounding it with portables? Just hang on long enough, and you'll go through that whole cycle.
But Steve,
I'll look forward to those conversations.
In some of the other areas, I'm getting a lot of heat about elementary schools.
Yeah.
So am I.
Yep, yep.
That's where, that's the heat
Yeah.
that's coming, because Skyview's okay, Green Cane's okay, but our elementary schools
Yeah,
are the ones that
yeah.
are.
And that's the next discussion we're gonna have with you. But we brought this one to you because we just don't think we can wait for that one to end up on a bond. That's the whole deal.
Sorry, Mike, I ate up your time, but
No.
that's what's going on.
That's okay. Right now, so when these 10 classroom additions come on to both Ridgeline and onto Green Canyon, it would then make them comparable in size to Mountain Crest and Skyview
In square.
in square footage and the number of kids, because, I mean, we had a lot of students in Mountain Crest, and we had a lot of students in Skyview. Now, you can go to those two schools today, and they say, oh, I don't know where we'd put them. Well, we'd know where they're put them, because the classrooms are still there. They're just doing something else with them. But anyway, just to give you some basic information, the way we would come up with funding, if we were to move ahead with this, is $2 million in capital outlay that we have right now, $1 million in general fund carryover that we have right now, and we would have to use another $1 million in FY20 capital as equalization funds. So that's how we would, if we go through the approval process with the board, that's how we would come up with the funds to do this. We've been working with the state purchasing agent on architect and contractor to try to see the right way that we can do this. Design West actually owns the plans. It was all designed, it was all spec'd out, it was all bid, everything was there. And then we pulled it.
Have we paid for the plan then, or not?
Well, it was all part of the design and everything, but there'll be things with Design West, I'm sure, when we have to go work with them. But it was all designed in the past. And
But their fees are based on the total cost of the project, so when you
Yeah.
pull those away.
yeah, it adjusts a little bit.
Yeah, and they'll be responsible to oversee the construction of the classroom. I mean, it's more than just
Yeah.
giving us a piece of paper with a
Yeah.
drawing. It's the whole process of construction that they're involved in.
But the main thing on that is we do not have to take that out to bid, because that plan is owned by DWA. It's unique to them, and we do not have to bid that out. We can just go directly to Design West and move ahead with it. There's been a little bit of question with DWA if we can just go right to them as the contractor and say, we want you now to complete this project. Because it was already in the bid, it was already in the design, we pulled it. We have not actually closed all of our bond projects with DWA at this point. That's still open, our bond projects and payments, but we're still waiting for an opinion from the state purchasing agent. Scott's working with them because we want to make sure that we're on good solid ground, because there could be some other people who want to argue about that a little bit. But it's the same thing we did at Providence Elementary. We put the addition onto Providence and walked away from that and moved on in the bond, and then came back and said, we're adding the 4 classrooms. And opened that school back up and added the 4 classrooms. It's the same thing that we're doing here.
Mike, so just so I understand, when I'm talking to people, there won't be any additional fees then for the ad. What do you think the annual operating cost increase would be on something like that?
Dale's going to be the best one to answer that. I think it'll be minimal, but
Yeah, I mean, as far as teacher costs, FTE, teacher FTEs, that's all based on a formula anyway, where we award
Right.
X number of teachers, or a teacher for X number of students.
Right.
Your only real cost is going to be possibly a little more increase in custodial service and utilities.
Utilities,
And
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it should be minimal.
And in the pictures that I gave you there, you can see the design where the 10 classrooms was on there. You can actually see the classroom layouts. They're on there. And that's where we think we're pretty solid. But we're waiting for confirmation, because it was all designed, it was all bid, and we're the ones who pulled it out.
But in these pictures, it just shows 6 classrooms because the 2 corner ones are removed on both first
Yeah.
and second floor.
But we put them, all 5 of them would be there.
Okay.
On both floors.
Okay.
Yeah. We've always planned on the 10 classrooms with it, and it's already been pre-plumbed. Everything's been pulled to that end of the building, and it's just ready to be attached to all the services. So are there any other questions that I could answer for the board right now?
Not so much questions, Mike, but Steve, if we went with that, I know the parents in my area are going to be screaming, the South got it, we need it.
And my only answer to that is, we will form a building and bond committee. But here's just, if you look at the middle school situation in our district right now, we knew that was the one area that if we'd had more money, we would have tried to solve that issue at the time. What you got to realize is, we've got a nice elementary created in Hyde Park. And the plan was always to come back and recover that. One of the questions that I know is going to immediately come out whatever committee you form is people are going to say, well, what's the population of South Cache and North Cache? And why would we, when we still have room in those 2 buildings, why would we build a 4th middle school? Except for the convenience of having every high school have a middle school feed into it. So that's a question that's got to be answered. And those are big buildings. Now, we have taken away portables from South Cache. They had 6 at one time? Was there
3 doubles.
Yeah, 3 doubles in the back. I think we've left 1.
There's 1 still there.
So we've taken away some of their capacity. But we really haven't done anything on the north end with North Cache. So that's an issue that's got to be looked at. We do have the property and could build an elementary very easily. But as soon as you bring all these people together from all across the valley, people in Hiram and the whole East Bench down here are going to say, well, boy, our needs for elementary are really great too. And so you're just going to have to put it's all going to have to come together. And you can't have an election except for every November now. So you'd have to put a committee together, hope you could put it together in time if we really think that we need to do it within a year. You've got to form a committee and put it together and have it ready to vote on by next November. And that's really a major feat. I don't know if you can pull it off or not. So the most realistic track is it'd be 2 years from this November before you even vote. And then you'd start building the processes after that 2 years. I mean, that's a realistic. A super fast track would be try to get something voted on next year, which would require that before Christmas we start forming a committee.
So are you talking about new elementary school or new middle school?
Well, that's what you have is pent-up elementary space, because we wouldn't really have that if we hadn't moved the 6th grade back, but that's what kind of forced the elementary. Plus, we put 6 new preschools in. 7? Yeah, that's in your book here. So you've taken up 7 spaces in elementary. Well, one of them went into Mountain Crest, and we're thinking about putting another one in the high school. And that's to give special needs 4-year-olds the opportunity of being ready for kindergarten. And we got a grant that's done all that, paid for setting those up, but it hasn't paid for the space. So we've had to take the space there. So you got to put all that on the table and say, okay, which of our elementaries are going to need relief of building another elementary? And we have property in Hiram, we have property in Nibley, we have property in Hyde Park, Smithfield, and Newton, We still got that out
Are
there.
you still talking about that?
So,
So is the Hiram property the one
Let's
by the
just
high
leave
school?
that one out.
well, we got two pieces, and we got the one up by the high school, but we own a piece down off of,
Just west of South Cache,
yeah.
10
But
acres
Steve,
down
there-
in there.
people in my
It's a
area,
nice piece.
people in my area are looking at the subdivisions that are going in, 200 homes, and what's going to happen with Summit, what's going to happen with Hyde Park, what's going to happen with Sunrise and Birch Creek. And there are some real quick concerns out there with all the people, all the subdivisions that are going in, because they're going to go in, and they're going to be homes that younger families are going to be getting into.
Where did Gary go? Had to leave?
Tithing settlement.
Gary has looked at all the elementary. He has a pretty good idea.
Okay.
And you've got that same kind of subdivision growth
On the
down,
south
down
end.
that south end. You
Yeah.
do, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a 2 to 3 year fix if you can get the people to vote for it. And I think you can. I don't question that. But it's at least, that's, when we started the last one, we thought we'd have a quick little meeting and get out something. But then we had a couple of options when you could vote. Now it's once a year. You do it on the general election or you don't do it.
We wouldn't even be having this discussion tonight if we didn't have this capital as equalization, because we would have never had that kind of money to even think about this either. So,
And
anyway,
that's what, about $5 million now, when you put up our portion with the state portion?
Oh, yeah.
Capital?
Yeah, combined.
So, yeah, you can see that that's more money than we've had in a long time, and it's ongoing now, so that's a solid thing. But you couldn't build one elementary without saving every penny of it for 3 years. So that, it's not the way we're gonna solve our overcrowding. Our overcrowding is gonna be solved the same way it has been in the past. We're gonna go out and have a vote. And you gotta convince people that the need is really there, and I don't think we're gonna have a problem doing that. But I think there's just, in my mind, there's probably a little fatigue right now with tax increases. So if we put it all together and give them something to vote on, I think they'll go along with this. I don't particularly, well, it will be a presidential election, won't it, 2 years from now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to get tangled up with that, that or not, but anyway.
Well, on a happier note, Skyview just won the second set.
Oh, okay.
Well, another
They
thing.
Hyde Park City during the year?
Yeah, another thing with this next election, not next month, but a year from now, is well, it won't actually be an election. I mean, we will need to increase the voted leeway property tax rate, because this will be the end of that 5-year period where we've allowed it to float down. We need to bring that back up to the 0016. And so that's going to be in the public's mind too as an election comes around, so.
And here's the other thing that you just need to understand. Dale, the model for this district on elementaries has been, you have elementary surrounded by portables, so that when the building comes online, you just move all those kids and the school's full. That's so you don't end up operating schools that are half full and cost as much to operate. So we aren't in any situation in any of our elementaries. I wish Gary was here, because I don't want to be,
yeah, River Heights is your biggest.
yeah, that's right. River Heights is the one that we do have the portables, and that's why we would really like to try and figure out a way to add classrooms onto that building and get those portables out of there. But that's the model we use. So when you see 6 to 8 to 10 portables around an elementary, you'll know that that's normally when we pull the trigger and have built a building and gone with it. So we've got a lot of portables that we can add to a lot of our buildings. Cedar Ridge had, right now, but they've had.
They're growing
but they've had
Six
six
there,
portables
3
there
doubles before. Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we'll do for a bit until we can get a committee formed. And that's what we normally would do with the high school too, but we've got the space. And we just kind of think we never would ever be able to come to you and propose something that we did like this out of our own. So this is the first time. So if it doesn't feel good, then we won't do it. But if it feels like we could do it, then we'll do it. And every little project that you have that rolls into a bond project just helps cement the fact that you got support from all over the valley. See, you've got a whole west side that they're pretty set with schools right now. You got a brand new school in Lewiston, you've got Mendon, which is a brand new school, and you got Wellsville, who's got a better school than they've ever had. So
But
all
Lewiston
that,
is not a West Side school.
which one isn't?
Lewiston is not a West Side
Oh.
school.
In my mind, growing up where I grew up, they're on the west side.
They're
But-
on the east side of the valley.
Okay. Anyway, those people they aren't gonna have a dog in the fight for many years. So you've gotta get the east side, and as you look at this fine presentation, you're gonna find that most people live on the east side anyway. So that's kind of where we're at.
Okay.
Thanks,
There's
Mike.
an idea, okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Just an idea.
Okay, so when does this change from an idea to an actuality?
When we come back to you with a full-fledged plan and you
Okay.
guys give us permission to do it.
Okay. All right, State of the District report is next.
Now, the only thing I'm gonna tell you here, I'm gonna wait till that comes down because I want you to hear this.
It's cute.
That's longer than a vote.
If, just as you watch this presentation, just ask yourself, what would have happened if in the beginning of this creation of this world, there had been established a PIO office to record everything that happened? We'd have had a better history to read in our schools.
sure.
This is really, really good. Yeah.
So is that going to come up on our computers?
I'm hoping so when I get to that point.
Okay.
But, yeah, I'm here to entertain you, so sit back and relax.
right,
It's
perfect.
been a tough meeting so far. You can relax now.
Pass the cookies around again.
Sometimes in life, you get to get a sneak peek of certain other people's lives and what they're like, and I think I got just a teeny sneak peek of Steve Jobs' life when he could envision an iPhone, and then somebody would actually go create it, and you could hold it in your hand and go, wow, that's pretty cool. Back when we were talking about doing an annual report and trying to get it at a consistent time each year and get a template set up, I had kind of a vision in my head of where to go with that, but Jenda really made it come alive and handed us a phenomenal annual report. And so I appreciate her efforts as far as acknowledgements. I want to point out something that's kind of unique in this report, in that all of the photography that you see in the report is of our kids. There's no stock photography. It's our kids, our schools, our teachers in the pictures. And that in and of itself represents a lot of work. I always forget her first name, DeGasser, Sandy DeGasser, we hired as a photographer, and she's been working with us to get a lot of these photos that we use on our website and use in our annual report. So you'll notice the quality of the photos in here are phenomenal. I think they add to the report.
And what's the cover photo? Where did?
The west side? Dang it, she's.
I just wanted Terry to recognize that her asking us to redesign the front of Lewiston ended up giving us, I think, a really, really fine looking traditional school. And that's where they're walking in. isn't it,
That's Lewiston, absolutely. Okay, I'm not going to go through every aspect of this report. Another person I do want to mention, though, is Robin Hedgecock, who had a lot to do with regard to some of the graphs, and Dell with the financial reports has been great. And then most of the departments wrote their own piece to kind of tell their story, but I want to highlight a few things in the report. First place I want you to go in the report is just page 2. I really like the bottom graph because it tells a story of where the students come from in our communities. And I would have never guessed when we started to put this graph together that so many of our students come out of Smithfield, being the largest contributor. But if you go all the way down to Mount Sterling, where we get and Cache Junction, those areas are important too. But kind of an interesting chart to look at. Next, if you'll jump just to the very next page, page 3. This chart tries to tell a story of more than just one annual report, but what we've been over in the last 3 years. And it kind of recognizes how much reconfiguring that we've actually done in this district. And I don't think you can quantify the effort that went into that, from district staff to school staff to pull off moving the 6th grade back into the elementary schools, building new facilities, moving the 9th grade up into the high schools, and doing a lot of remodeling. So, but you'll notice there it just talks about, on that second column, it shows, you can look and compare what we looked like 3 years ago and then what happened to those enrollments in the first year when we reconfigured the south end, so that'd be the middle column, and then what happened when we reconfigured the north end, which would have been the last column. And there were a couple of instances where school enrollments actually went down. Mountainside has some room for growth right now. North Park has some room for growth right now, just based on different programs and different things we were doing at those schools and the way it kind of fell out. The next several pages, just good stories to read on some of the things going on in some of the departments. These don't all read maybe with the same continuity because they weren't all authored by the same person, but you can read what some of the departments or some of the programs in our district have been doing. I wanted to highlight just a couple, and the superintendent spoke to one of these just a minute ago, but we've really pulled off something rather monumental. We have about 400 preschool students that are under our roofs in this district that weren't under our roofs just a couple of years ago. So that move to work on preschools has had an impact, and certainly we're a district that believes in early childhood education, and I think that's going to reap some benefits down the road. The dual language immersion program would be another example of a program that we've had for the last several years that is now moving into our middle schools. In a couple of years, we'll be moving into our high schools. So another one that has been an important part of the programs that we've built in the district over the last few years. And now the challenge is, how do we sustain those programs ongoing? The last thing I just want to point out in that section is just, and I should have said this earlier, you can talk about the acknowledgments of the people that helped create the report, but really in essence, there's a lot of work that goes into what you're going to see reflected in this report, all the way from district administrators, that starts at the top with the superintendent, to school administrators, to teachers, to support staff that surround those teachers. And it's great information. You talk about even just student nutrition, feeding the number of students we do on any given day. Transportation, transporting those students around the school district, especially in the reconfiguration that we've undergone. I am always amazed by the job that Wayne does in our transportation department to move those students on a daily basis and to do it in a way that seems kind of effortless. And so some great things going on there. You can read about some of those things. Obviously, our facilities departments had a big role to play in all of our remodels and rebuilding, and that's taken a lot of their time and attention. Jump over to page 13. Just want to point out that we are still the top performing overall school district in the state. And again, that represents a lot of hard work by our staff and a lot of great students and a lot of great parents in our district. We are the top performing school district in mathematics and science and second in language arts. And then if you look over on page 14, the state of Utah looks at the top 10% of elementaries in the school, or in the state, and so these elementary schools that you see in the top 10%, or from our district, are in that top 10%. And then for the middle schools and the high schools, they recognize the top 25 traditional high schools and the top 25 traditional middle schools, and you can see the rankings in there. Ridgeline High School was the #1 high school in the state. We brought that up to you several weeks ago. #1 in language arts, #2 in mathematics. Mountain Crest was right behind them, #3 in mathematics. Spring Creek, #1 middle school in the state in mathematics. So a lot to be proud of and recognize with our schools. If you flip over to pages 15 and 16, we wanted to give you a flavor. You know, it's fun to look at how they're doing across. We wanted to give you a flavor of what it looks like, what we look like compared to the other 40 school districts in the state. So you can see this at the top there, and you kind of see the numbers on proficiency numbers.
That's amazing in math that it's 5% higher than.
Yeah.
That's, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. So.
Yeah.
I love this quote actually that Jenda included here by Superintendent Norton about just test scores being one way that represent to look at success, but these represent a major accomplishment on behalf of our school community. The next several pages you can look through. It breaks down by grade and gives you a 3-year longitudinal, I can't say that word ever, but a 3-year look or snapshot at how we're doing in each of those subject areas. The orange lines are how the state is performing on average, and then we're the blue bar on each of those.
One thing you need to remember is the test changed, the proficiency levels got more difficult, so that's why we're not as high in the percentage of kids. We'll get there where we were before.
Page 21, if you want to jump over there, is the ACT scores. Mike handed me the 2017 or 18 test scores today, which represents our 11th graders, but this gives you an idea of where we are nationally and against the state and against the district. These are norm, the ACT is a norm reference, so you don't get a lot of fluctuation, but you can see in almost every instance we're ahead of state or national averages on our ACT scores. I want to point out the graduation rate. I'll show you another graph just a little bit later, but 95% is phenomenal. There's only 2 school districts in the state of Utah higher than that, and they're very small school districts, small rural school districts. So just a phenomenal number for a school district of our size that we're getting that many students through. And I'm going to show you some numbers in a minute on how we compare to other school districts. I always love the numbers on the number of college courses that our students are taking or credits that they're earning in both our concurrent enrollment and advanced placement programs. It's just indicative of the quality of students we have and the great partnerships we have with our colleges and universities across the state. While we do most of our business in concurrent enrollment with Utah State University, we have programs in our school from Weber State University, from Utah Valley University, from Weber State University provides programming to our students that take college courses from each of those universities. So in courses that USU doesn't offer. So we reach out to those other universities to provide those opportunities for students. 23, 24, I think Dale will get into in a lot more depth, but kind of reminds you of Terry's presentations earlier this year about where the money goes or where it comes from.
I thought, Dale, that took care of number 4 and 5 here on the agenda.
If you want a quick snapshot of who the principals were last year at each of our schools, these have tweaked just a tiny bit, but in most cases, these are all the same and what our schools look like. You can look at that and you can see the enrollment at each of our elementary schools if you want to look at kind of where we were at a snapshot last year. We just got our October 1 counts back. We continue to grow 300 to 500 students a year. I think we're, Dale, I don't think I have the latest, but it's 261, I want to say.
Yeah, we were up about 275 kids above
275.
what we had, that was
Above and beyond
above
what we, the
last
1%
October.
growth. So we're still in the 300 to 500
Yeah.
student range of growth each year. And that goes on very many years, and we start to get questions from our patrons on how much we're growing. Just jump back to, doesn't have a page number on it, but 35. This is 35 and 36 are the infographic, is the infographic that Genda does each year. This is the second annual infographic. You know, all you have to do is sit in this room at the beginning of the school year to recognize that student growth means teacher growth. And we've hired over 100 teachers in the last 2 or 3 years, and we pack this room with young new teachers or teachers coming from other school districts that are joining us on a yearly basis. So that's phenomenal that we're up to 954 teachers. It doesn't seem like that long ago we were at 700 teachers.
Yeah. Give you an idea what that translates to an individual school. I've been out at Ridgeline for the last 3 days visiting first, second, and third year teachers. 25 of the staff members out there are in the first, second, and third year of teaching.
Wow.
I was going to show you some charts and graphs, and I'll bring up just one. I don't want to take too much more time, but I want you to know that you're getting a 30,000-foot view of the achievement numbers in this district, and I want to assure you that we dig much deeper than that. Our curriculum specialists, our administrators, our teachers, work very hard to drill down to the teacher level, to the student level, to the grade level, to look at those numbers, to examine them. I've got lots of interesting, colorful, beautiful charts that they go through. I've been in several meetings, and we're not satisfied, as the superintendent said, with the numbers, although we lead the state with the status quo. We're trying to find ways to bring those, to continue to teach and bring our proficiency levels up in our school district. I want to show you.
Tim?
Yes.
I had a question back on page 2.
Yep.
113 students from Preston.
They never lost a set down the state tournament.
From Preston, Idaho?
Well, it says Preston.
In the region, and then all the way through the state tournament.
What do we do there, Genda? Help me out. I'll look into that, get it back to you. If that's a typo or if that's 113.
That's
I know
what
we do accept out-of-state students. They pay out-of-state tuition, and it's quite high. It's $4,000 or $5,000.
So they do bring
Yeah.
money in when they come.
Yeah, they bring their
Okay.
money. They bring money with them.
But
Same-
who would question whether we would let a Prestonite in? I mean, they want to come and get a good education. No, they bring their resources.
If they want to come and get a good volleyball team, Skyview just won state championship in volleyball.
Good.
They never lost a set throughout the state tournament.
That's amazing.
That's great.
Good for them.
This is what I wanted to show you on the graduation records. So our information systems staff, one of the ways we get such a high graduation rate is we don't stop till we've tracked every single kid and made sure we know where they're at and accounted for them and made sure that they're where they say they're supposed to be. And so you can see as you go down, here's Green Canyon, I mean, they were at 97. Actually, our high schools are higher than 95%. It's Cache High, which brings us down to the 95, but Cache High has went from like, I want to say in the 50 to 60%. They're up at 88% now. So on the flip side of the coin, Cache High is one of the reasons we continue to be high as well, because they continue to serve kids there and help them to graduate. But 97.6% at Green Canyon. We know the students, each one of them, one dropout, one unknown, one certificate of completion, 4 retained seniors that we're not done with. They'll count against us on graduation, but they're still in our school system, and we're still going to make sure that they get through school and get a high school diploma. So if you took that for what, we're probably about 98, 99% at Green Canyon High School, making sure those kids get through high school.
Wow.
So what I want to show you at the bottom here, that's us against just some well-known school districts that some have similar demographics to us or similar types of populations. Box Elder's at 84%, Logan 85%, Davis we think is a very affluent school district, 94%. Salt Lake and Provo in the 70s. You can kind of just get a feel of where we sit in the pack a little bit. There's a great graduation report. I actually did a graduation report 15 years ago for the state, helped on that, and we were so far flung across the state on how we counted graduates that we couldn't come up with a decent report on who graduated and who didn't. So we've come a long way in this state in being able to identify kids and who graduates and who doesn't. Okay, one last number, and I'll let you go. I found a quote at a presentation the other day. It says, even if you have reams of evidence on your side, remember, numbers numb, jargon jars, and nobody ever marched on Washington because of a pie chart. If you want to connect with your audience, tell them a story. So I want to tell you just a really brief story about one of the numbers in this report. I sat in this room several months ago at a literacy meeting, and we had school districts in this room from all over the state of Utah. We had to open the curtain back here. We went all the way to the back. We had many school districts represented, and we had the state experts on early literacy here training us on a new literacy plan that the state has adopted, which Cache District had a huge part in helping to write. And they gave us that day some little whiteboards that you could write on with markers. And one of the first questions they asked of all the districts, they said, take one of your whiteboards and we want you to write on the whiteboard what percentage of your students are reading on grade level by the end of third grade. And so we wrote our number, and I turned around and looked at all the district numbers who were holding them up, and you had 77% and 56% and 45% and 33%. And Cache, luckily we were sitting at the front, so nobody got to feel embarrassed, but 88% is what that number is. It's on our infographic in the page 35. And then I love the next question. The next question they asked is, write down the percentage that you think you could realistically get to on your whiteboard next. And same thing, I turned around. I thought it was going to be 100% across. We had a small discussion in our group, and we decided we'd write 95%, that even though we wanted to write 100%, we knew there's some students in our district that are challenged because of cognitive disabilities and other things that we just knew we couldn't get them by the end of third grade. So we wrote 95%. But as I turned around and looked out, it was 50%, 65%, 75%. And I was shocked that not all the boards said we can get up to 95%. They just didn't think they could pull that off in their district. And then I spent the next 2 hours listening to our literacy team in this district talk about the 7% between 88 and 95 and what they were missing, that they couldn't reach that 7%, and what they were going to do to go about accomplishing that. And that was just one of those rewarding days in my career where I got to see the fruits of a lot of hard work in this district. If you go to any of our elementary schools in the morning, you'll see small groups of kids with adults working on reading and making sure they can read on grade level by the end of grade 3. Gary likes to say, I challenge you to go out in those rooms and tell me who the certified teacher is. It's just wonderful that we have great, well-qualified, well-trained adults working with these kids specifically in the areas that they need to work on. And that's a credit to the superintendent who had the vision to set that as a goal.
Let me just add a subchapter to that. Because my desire to go out and visit first, second, and third year teachers led me to being in the schools a lot when I first came here. And so the principal has to give me a schedule and tell me where to go so that I can be in the classroom when the teacher's there teaching. And it didn't take very long before I was marching back into the principal's office saying, there's nobody in that classroom. And they would look at what was going on. They said, oh yeah, they're not there now. They're out in computers, or they're out in PE, or they're out in something, and we better send you here. Well, it didn't take very long for me to realize that we didn't have a block of academic time that was uninterrupted in the morning. And that was one of the first things that the literacy team decided that they needed to do, was we needed a 3-hour block in the morning that we didn't send kids helter-skelter to all the other things we do in an elementary setting. And I think that was the beginning of a long string of decisions that were made in this district that allowed us to be where we're at today. But it was just something that simple that we just didn't have an uninterrupted block of time when the kids just concentrated on learning and didn't get up and go out and all that. So that's just a side, because you won't find that now. You go out to any of our elementary schools in the morning, they'll be right where they say they'll be, and they'll be for about half of that time, 90 minutes, in the small groups. And we always talk about our teachers. It's teachers plus all those aides who have learned how to teach reading because we've instructed them how to do it. And we watch to make sure they do it, and that's the result.
And I'm convinced that ripple effect of that commitment to students K through 3 is what ripples through our system and causes us to lead the state in our middle schools and high schools now, is because we've got literate kids in our school district. And now they learn to read, now they read to learn. So
whatever happens down the road, if somebody comes and talks about reading and wants to go down a different road, I hope some of you will just rent your clothes and sit in sackcloth and ashes and say, we're not going there. So.
Any questions? I've taken way too much time.
No, it's very well done, Tim. Honestly,
Yeah.
that is
Impressive.
Yeah.
Thank you,
that's very
Jenda.
nice
Yep.
booklet.
Yes, Jenda,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much.
The
Yeah.
booklet
Yeah,
is
she deserves the
beautiful,
credit.
and congratulations to everybody in the district for the hard work.
Is there
Because-
any way that we could get this out to some of our patrons?
Most definitely. Probably can't afford to print them in that format, but we can definitely put them on our website.
Yeah.
We can send them out PDF format. We can do a lot of things to promote that.
This ought to be in everybody's hands. This is really good stuff.
So we're hoping, our hope is to, come out with this every October. If you have things in here that you think, gosh, I wish we had a pie chart on this, just let us know, and we'll change the report for next year, but if there's something that's screaming at you that.
And you, other board members need to know that Kathy made a request that we don't just talk about the good things going on in our district, that we come prepared to tell you about areas of concern. Well, we've already talked about the area of concern. It's our growth.
Yeah.
And we'll meet it, but it's something we don't have complete control over because we have to have the buy-in of our patrons. But I think this book is all we need to hold up to say, you give us the opportunity to house your kids properly, we'll educate them.
You know, when I came on the board, I thought the biggest problem that we had in the district was communication and changing the narrative. And this totally takes care of both. So, good work. Really good work.
So that all goes back to a decision to put some money and resources into telling our story.
Yeah.
And you forced that from the top down, but we finally got it.
Well, I think everybody, you know, has brought that.
It's paid immense dividends.
It's easy to tell a good story, by the way. This good story's always been there. It's just fun to tell it.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, thank you so much on that. All right, Dale, we'll turn the time over to you for our monthly financial report.
If you think that was a good story, wait till you hear this one.
And then our financial report.
Hey, I like this one.
Yeah,
Dale?
thank you.
I happen to like this story.
Reader's Digest version, please.
Why don't you flip the lights on so we can, if we're going to look at numbers, we might as well see them.
I did actually flip the order of the items on the agenda just a minute ago. I don't know if that came across on your screen, but thought I'd first go with the year-end financial report and then just quickly hit the monthly report.
It didn't.
It didn't?
It
Okay.
didn't switch on ours.
Well, consider it flipped, if you would, please. So my goal is, as Tim said, I don't want the numbers to make you numb, so we'll make this thing fairly quick. In the superintendent's State of the District report, again, it's really good to see in graph form some of the information that's easier to pull out than trying to compare the numbers in the reports that we've had. But it is interesting to see that in the general fund, 76% of the funds come from state income taxes. Only 17.4% are local funds. A majority of that would be property tax. A lot of taxpayers feel like they fund the full cost of education through property tax, especially farmers seem to think that too. And with Greenbelt, they can survive, but they don't pay all the taxes, thank goodness. On the other page, it shows what the funds are actually used for. This, again, is looking just at the general fund, where 58% is tied up into salaries and benefits is another 24.5%. And so you're looking at, what, almost 84% is tied up, the budget into salaries and benefits. That's one
Well, I'm going to
reason.
beg you for a page number. Where are you at?
24.
Oh, 24, I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah, if we ever have, when we have to go through budget cuts or something like that, it's difficult to make a difference in the general fund because so much of it's tied up into salaries and benefits. You can only cut travel and supplies so much, and it doesn't make that big a difference. And then down below actually takes all of the funds that we have as a school district and shows again that the general fund is almost 69% of the total funds in the district itself, and then breaks it out between capital and debt and school lunch and so forth. So anyway, that's kind of a nice picture presentation to see. The report that I have for you is this one here that I handed one out to you here before the meeting started. What this provides is the 2 year-end reports that are required to be submitted to the state attorney or the state auditor's office and to the state school board. One of them is an annual financial report where it takes each fund, looks at a balance sheet, compares the revenue, compares expenditures, and then gives you an equity presentation at the end of each fund. The last report in that booklet is actually a report by program, so it will take each program that we offer and show a specific presentation of the revenues generated in that program, how the funds were expended. And so that's really helpful, I think, when there's questions about like trust lands, how much do we bring in on trust lands, what's it used for? This will give you that type of information. But then what I would turn to quickly is right in the middle of the booklet. There's, say on page 31 and 32 is a proof of cash report for the entire district. And then following that on page 33 is the two financial reports that we look at throughout the year on a monthly basis, but looks at a comparison at year end. So you can really see how all the numbers actually panned out by year end. And then the two items I would go to, it's most important, I think, one's on page 40 and 41. This is taking the general fund and looking at how we ended up the year with carryover funds within the fund itself. So it'll show that we had $12.7 million as an accrued balance as of June 30th. Almost $2 million of that is tied up into state restricted programs that hadn't spent all of the funds that were provided to them for the year. So it will show, in essence, their carryover balance. But by rule, we're not supposed to recognize revenue until it is actually used for the purpose it was received. And so this is now under the heading of deferred revenue. So it's revenue that will be recognized in the following year when it's expended. So the $4.1 million really is outside of the financial report that's turned into the state. Will all be shown next year as it's expended. But we do end the year still with an undistributed reserve of $2.5 million. We have a small fire insurance deductible, really ought to be increased. That's been there forever and ever, and that wouldn't even come close to what our deductible is right now. And then below that, our carryover balances from local funds that are unrestricted that have been allocated out, such as combined, these are paraprofessionals in the classrooms with budgets we give out to schools. We let them carry over from year to year if they don't expend it all. Custodial supplies, you can see, instructional textbooks. On the next page you go over, you'll have all the supply, textbook, media budgets, so we give out to the schools. That there was $345,000 there that will carry over the next year. The Smithfield Recreation Center, which we operate jointly with Smithfield City, has a balance of $193,000. There's actually a schedule of, mostly with their HVAC replacement of gym floors and the multi-purpose floors. So we have a kind of a schedule as to what we feel the life expectancy of each of those items would be, and so this carryover keeps us right in track with what we would need so that the funds are available when those repairs will probably come due. That way would put a large burden on the city or the school district to try to come up with those funds immediately. There's actually reserve set up for that. And then the very last number on there is what they call an unappropriated fund balance. And so those are the funds, they're unrestricted, so they can be used, and they're not designated for any specific use right now. And they're not restricted, so they have to be just reserved for the specific purpose they were received. But we actually ended up with $3.6 million as a undistributed reserve. And if you want to see comparison of how that's been with past years, the next page, page 42, shows a 5-year history of the general fund carryover balance. You can see at the very bottom, last year in FY17, we had a $4.7 million unappropriated fund balance, and that had been growing over time, and that's actually the funding source that we used to purchase the new district office, was with those carryover funds. And so as Mike was presenting the idea of the 10 classroom addition at Ridgeline, part of the anticipated funding would be used a million of that 3.6 million and direct that toward that program. The rest of it would come on the following page, which is the capital outlay fund. And so we actually ended up with $4.6 million of carryover funding there. $1.25 million of that is intended to finish the building projects that we currently had with Cash High, some with the district office. Again, these are not bond funds. This is mostly capital equalization funding that are state funds. There's carryovers in equipment allocations we give out to schools of $423,000. But the large amount, the $2.7 million, is what would be carried over in the maintenance department for building renovations and repairs that they have to deal with. Working with them, the plan would be to actually use $2 million of that $2.7 million to be directed towards that 10 classroom addition. So that would bring a total of $3 million. Our estimates right now is that cost of that building is going to be somewhere between $3.5 to $4 million. We haven't really refined the number any better than that, but so the balance of that would come from future funding of capital equalization funds that we receive from the state. So right now we're receiving $3.8 million a year of capital equalization funds, and so in this year's budget there's plenty of that to handle the maintenance needs that they have. So that allows this $2 million to be used for a one-time purchase, which the classroom addition would definitely be. And so I would say that the district is in excellent financial condition right now. I worried how we'd be having spent that $5.2 million for the new building, but there was plenty else in the program to make that good. Now,
can you explain one thing to me? Because I did kind of get painted into a corner, not by myself, but by a couple of people who said, oh, you bought that big fancy building for the district, which I defended really well, and then you spent all that money to remodel it. Have we spent all that money to remodel it?
Very little. I think it was about, well, the first remodeling was only about $30,000 as I remember. And then there are some plans right now to provide some covered parking in the back, but we really haven't moved forward as far as building new office space or a new boardroom or.
I told them that we were really waiting until we sold the other two buildings, this one and the other one, before there was any remodeling.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. One other thing that was impacted in this year that provided a nice chunk of that carryover balance in the general fund is that in the school lunch program, we were told that we haven't been in all the years past and before I was ever here, ever charging indirect costs to the school lunch program. And this past year, the indirect cost rate was like 11.3%. And we've been charging that to our CTE programs and adult ed that are in one category, and then all the other state programs have like about a 3% indirect cost rate. And they said you can't select and charge indirect cost against some programs and not others. So you have to do it all or else none. And we couldn't go with none, so we actually
could, but you didn't want to.
Yeah, true. Okay. So we did actually charge indirect costs. It was about $750,000 to the school lunch program. And that brought them down from...
Is that why it looks like there's a loss per meal?
Yes, yeah, that's a charge that they've never had before. And if we kept doing that at that same rate, we would deplete their whole fund balance in another year and a half. It would be gone. So I've asked them at the state, I said, well, you know, what do districts do instead of taking such a large hit on their school lunch program? And they said many districts, they'll charge the indirect cost, and then at the start of the next year, they'll make a contribution back to the school lunch program out of their general fund. And so that's something I think we'll want to talk about, because the fund balance just continued to grow there, and we kept having to raise ticket prices with the federal requirements, because they didn't want us supplanting any of the paid meals with federal funds that we receive under the school lunch program. But anyway, so that's something we are going to have to deal with and address. But all in all, I would just say it was a really good year. It was nice not to have any findings on the audit report, and to be in a good position financially.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're okay, want to move on?
Yeah.
This will be a quick one. So we do have monthly financial reports for July, August, and September. So if you'd like, I'll just quickly address September's, which is the most current, and say that this is all based on the original estimated budget that we created last June and approved at that time. So since then, I know our student enrollment is up. We've actually added, probably 8 or so teacher FTE positions that were not originally budgeted. I mean, there's several things like that the budget doesn't reflect at this point. And so the October 1 count it's been presented to the state. They will get revised revenue estimates back to us in December, is usually when those show up. But we'll go through and we'll look at the personnel we currently have on staff and see what budget adjustments we have. We do have the carryover funds that can shore up the budget for the current year. But then again, there'll be additional revenue with the increased enrollment that we have experienced this year in October 1 counts. The school lunch program only had one month of experience there, so it doesn't show a lot for the year thus far. But again, their carryover balance was down considerably from what it was the year before.
So it looks really bad.
Yeah, it in that sense it does. Like I say, we can talk about that. But so I would just say for right now, in the current year, we are in a strong financial position. There's still a lot of opportunities what we can do here to solve some issues that we're addressing, and glad we can be that way.
Great. Thank you. Okay, board committee report. Do you have anything, Terry, on this one?
No, I think that was left on there from last
Okay.
meeting.
Oh, okay. All right, on the board president minute, I just included a section from our board handbook on board requests for information, and this is concerning students, but not personal information about students. I think our district does great to get information to us at our board meetings, through the board docs, different presentations, and email. But the second paragraph, if the information sought is not readily available through the work of the board committees, board members are to coordinate their information requests with the board president, and then that can all be passed on through one person. So then the superintendent isn't bombarded with tons of requests, and so that's just a procedure to follow. Okay, just a couple of things. Remember to use your lanyards as you go into the school, and I totally forgot mine today. If you haven't passed your MBA section and you're working on it, you need to do the open law section. And did everybody get information today from USBA on how they changed their
Website, yeah.
But I went on and tried to do a takeover, or not a takeover. That's kind of my style, but a retake of one of the things, and I can't get in. Do you know why I can't do that?
I haven't had a chance to be on yet.
Okay, well, if you figure it out, let me know.
Kathy, just call them down there.
Well,
That's all you have to do.
Okay.
And they'll hook you up. I think it's with Josh. I think that's who it is. And he'll walk you through the process.
Okay.
Just,
I know I
but
tried
just
last year
call.
and I couldn't retake. They said just take the first one again, and I tried and I couldn't, so I'll do that.
Just write down your answers. Second time you
Okay.
take it, you got it.
All right.
I don't have a lanyard. Last year when they handed them out,
Oh.
my
His had my picture on it.
I don't
And
have
his
one.
name.
Okay, could you get
And
me
he
one?
didn't ever get a new one.
Yeah, you probably want to get a come in though and get a new picture.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you just come in,
Why?
Who takes them?
we can
My
take.
name was spelled wrong, and I haven't got mine back yet either.
Yeah, I never got one.
Oh,
Good grief.
That was my problem too, was the name was spelled wrong.
So we've got three, Randall,
Yeah.
Roger, and Larry. that
So we need to
If any time you're just coming by,
you what?
they'll just take your picture and,
Down at the other building?
no,
I
this one.
remember
This
that.
building.
That's the time.
Okay.
And now I forgot.
All right, that is all.
Summit.
Is December 6th a good night after our meeting to have our Christmas party? Check your calendars and let me know.
For me, it's,
two.
well, if I come solo, I can do that fine.
Okay.
But that's a town council meeting.
Oh. Okay.
Thursday.
It's Thursday, right after
It's the
board
first
meeting.
Will we just have one meeting in December?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we probably need to talk about maybe one meeting in November. We could have a meeting. There's nothing pressing this next board Thursday except Mountain Crest. And Carolyn has talked to them and they'd be happy to do it in
Okay.
January.
All right, well then, what's your
there's-
feeling about skipping next
We
week's?
just don't
next
have any
meeting?
items that need
I
to.
can tell you, I won't be here anyway, so.
I'm okay with skipping it as long as the next one is not 3 hours
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
Well,
I agree.
if you don't have anything on the study session that's gonna move forward, there's not, it's probably gonna be not much then either. Yep.
Okay. All right. We-
So, one other thing I need to talk to you about, so we were gonna do that, meeting about the safety.
Oh, the
Safety
parent university?
On the 14th, and now that's the,
Fall regional meeting.
yeah. So what I was